Stupid people are hired by the electrical power grid industry to perform electrical engineering because that's all they'll get paid for. They won't get paid for doing anything intelligent, so it's called electrical engineering. But electrical engineering is predicated on linear dynamics, in which there's only one variable and its amplitude, and that's it. And so it's called linear for that reason, first-order polynomial. But it also means when you graph it, it's a straight line. Now, specifically what I'm dealing with is nonlinear electrodynamics. And nonlinear means exponential, because that's what electrical reactance does when you stop focusing on amplitude of your input and start focusing on all of the factors of electrical reactance which can modify the output, the amplitude of output, without having to increase the amplitude of the input, but doing the opposite, decreasing the amplitude of the input in order to allow the four factors of electrical reactance to predominate, namely frequency of input, the duration, the capacitive reactance resulting from capacitance within the circuit affecting the input, and the inductive reactance arising from inductance contributing to the input, the modification of the input to produce the output that you desire. So even though we want a certain, the goal is a certain amplitude of output, to achieve it, we can't focus on giving it amplitude of input. We have to do the opposite in order for electrical reactance to dominate. So they give it a fancy schmancy name, and then they use a legalistic standard of negation, nonlinear dynamics, to make it sound like it's perverse or something. And they make it sound like it's a scientific oddity instead of calling it a certain branch of engineering, a certain branch of electrical engineering. They don't. They don't use the term engineering, which tells the person right away, very subconsciously, maybe subliminally, you're not going to get paid. Oh yeah, it's a certain type of dynamics that you will not get paid for because it's not called engineering. A mechanical engineer gets paid for his work. Why shouldn't somebody dealing with over unity circuits get paid for their work? They won't, because there's no money in it. If the price of energy should go down to ridiculously low levels, like a fraction of a penny per customer, then how can you call it engineering? The economy would become worthless, because the biggest use of money is commodity exchange. It used to be gold and silver currency, but we don't have that anymore. But if you want to know the value of money, you look at the biggest commodity exchange on this planet that gives money its value is oil, crude oil by the barrel. And that's how you look at inflation. What did it cost a crude barrel of oil a century ago at the inception of the Federal Reserve versus today? And it's about a factor of 100. Actually, it's more than 100. I checked 10 years ago, it was 100 to 1. Now it's something probably more, like 120 or 130 percent gain. No, excuse me. No, not percent. No, 120 or 130 times. So you got to add 2 zeros to that, and that's like 12 or 13,000% gain. Anyway. So if petroleum were no longer purchased from the Middle East, we'd no longer be able to dominate. We'd have no reason to have a military base in Saudi Arabia. And so we would no longer be able to dictate foreign policy to what otherwise would be considered backward countries, because we're keeping them afloat. We're sending all our dollars to Saudi Arabia. It's no wonder Dubai is a kind of fancy schmancy town with lots of shopping centers and fancy schmancy buildings and architecture and city landscapes, but it's all because of our dollars feeding their economy, which we didn't have to do over the past century. Just like the Six-Day War between the Arabs surrounding Israel and Israel didn't have to happen except to bring in Henry Kissinger by making the sheikh of leader of Saudi Arabia so frightened of the Israelis when he thought he was so confident, him and his Arab allies, that they would wipe Israel off the planet, and instead Egypt loses the whole Sudan Peninsula to Israel. So that frightened the sheikh. And he says, Henry, you got to put a military base in my country. Okay, well, you have to sell all your oil in U.S. dollars and no other currency. And because he's the leading OPEC nation, all the other OPEC nations followed suit. Well, except two broke rank. And look what happened to them. Their leaders, their fearless leaders, Saddam Hussein, traded his oil, his Iraqi oil, to Turkey in euros. And he was executed, found and executed. The George Bush Jr. went in there and ordered his military to find him, hiding in a little cave. Not so funny for Saddam. And then Hugo Chavez was poisoned, there was one attempt on his life, and it failed. And then the second attempt succeeded, and it was probably poison. Because he traded his oil, he's an OPEC nation, he traded his oil with Cuba in exchange for sugarcane, or sugar, because he wanted to get in the business that Brazil was getting into, the business of ethanol production. And yet, no more Hugo Chavez, no more Saddam Hussein. So this is how important it is to manipulate the wording of what we do to make a living. There's only two electrical job categories that pay any money: the computer industry or the grid, the power grid, and that's it. And unless you train yourself for one or the other, you're not going to get paid in the field of electrodynamics. So God forbid you should dabble in nonlinear electrodynamics, exponential electrodynamics. I mean, it's, out of this world. Man-made world, but world nonetheless. So that's all I have to say. It's my basic diatribe. So now I understand that my book, Free Energy from Imaginary Power, that's how it started, the title, and I can't change it. It's on Amazon. It's fixed that way. Unless I curtail the book and replace it with the same book but a different title. But I don't think I want to do that. So I'm going to put this in the introduction that it should really be a new title. It should be Exponential Electrodynamics, or I could go with the standard nonlinear, the electrical reactance branch or subcategory of nonlinear dynamics would be a more accurate, maybe explicit description. The electrical, because that's really all I'm studying, is how electrical reactance can manipulate power or energy, if you prefer, to such a degree that amplitude is the least of your concerns for input. It may be for the output, but not for the input. The input gets more complicated. And that's what AI kept saying. The Bing Copilot, GPT, George Patrick Thomas -4, it's their latest model. It kept saying that the way you're describing what you're studying is very intricate and very complicated. Well, yeah, that's why I use a simulator, because I don't want to have to deal with the nuances, as the AI put it. Some of the questions I asked it have been changed, sometimes for the worse, by taking out the juicy parts that explain and describe what I'm studying, and in some cases it got better. And in some cases it remains exactly the same as before. So it's funny how AI has morphed a little bit its answers, its perspective, more sometimes more in the lineup of conventional standards to maintain, and sometimes to improve upon the answers I gave. But I'm sticking with my versions, the original ones, because I confronted AI there at Bing while it was still innocent and no one had tested it, challenged it with the type of questions that I had challenged it with. So I got honest answers in some cases. Well, in many cases. But it's not honest if you keep your question simple. You have to make your question complicated, wordy, with lots of intricate details, just the way that Buckminster Fuller spoke, which is hard to understand, but it's the only way to be precise and to get a precise answer. And so Buckminster Fuller was thinking like a machine does, an artificial intelligence does, because that's the way they think. In science, I guess science in general fosters that kind of wordiness, because it's the only way to get to the answer that you desire, is to be very wordy and very intricate, very articulate, blah, 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 very accurate. But boy, it makes it hard to listen. It's a whole paragraph. Just one little question becomes a paragraph. It's unbelievable. But it was the only way to steer AI in the direction I wanted it to go, to a large degree. And I didn't get complete success, but I got pretty good. I got it in pockets. See, every time I asked a question, I was focusing on a different aspect of what I'm studying. And so I couldn't cover everything in one question. It had to be lots of questions. And some of them were the simple kind that actually worked. Rarely, though. Most of the time, simple, short questions don't work. But a couple times they did. Most of the time I had to make it intricate. And one interesting area that I did get some level of success without having to be wordy was drawing a comparison between money and power, electrical power. AI lit up like a panel of light bulbs, although it kept reminding me, oh yeah, but still your idea of free energy is in the toilet. You know, don't even bother thinking you're going to get anything out of that. That was before I realized that one of the links it had given me on the simple questions regarding nonlinear dynamics is the answer to what I'm studying. Wondering, what am I studying that's in the realm of science that covers what that already covers what I'm studying. Anywho. So I got nothing more to say. That's about it. It was upsetting dealing with AI at times, frustrating, but I think I did a pretty good job considering, because I know my topic. It's just we're shanghaied. We're steamrolled into a socially engineered position of less than the whole picture of electrical theory. It's for the purpose of squandering our resources, basically, because you don't make much money if you start to conserve. That's interesting. We have conservation of energy. Well, how about conservation of expending money so that we don't have to work so much? See, this is the whole deal. By keeping us stupid, we have to work harder to pay for things we don't have to pay for to the extent that we do, which means we have to work more, which means we have less time to go back to school and get an education and really learn how things work. So no, just give it to me quick, and I'm out the door, and because I want to get paid, And then jack us up on coffee, which helps. Put chocolate in all the protein bars, that helps. So we've really got a socially engineered society to keep us stupid but busy. And that keeps the money flowing and the bankers happy.